Welcome to Kent Hance, the best storyteller in Texas podcast. We start every episode with the saying of the day. What do you have for us today?
Saying of the day was a soldier in Argentina, and he said, I walked into a bar and everyone was happy and drinking. We had lost the war.
You talked about the Falklands War.
Yeah, and the Falklands, we're going to talk about that in a moment. I happened to be in Congress when that happened. But I thought that's the most unusual statement by a soldier that, everybody's drinking happy, we had lost the war. Let's move on. I wanted to mention last week I was in Washington, and we had at the Indian Treaty Room there at the White House Annex the swearing in of Andrew Hughes, who is the Deputy Secretary of HUD. He's the youngest they've ever had as Deputy Secretary of HUD. He's 39 and was a student of mine in 2007 at Texas Tech.
Wow.
And he's an outstanding young man and will do an excellent job. Deputy Secretary is the number 2 guy. Scott Turner, another guy that's a friend of mine, is the Secretary of HUD. And he's a former state representative in the legislature here in Texas and worked in the White House during the first Trump administration. Now they've made him the Secretary of HUD.
You know, when you see young people, you can oftentimes look at one of them and go, that one's going somewhere. Yeah. That one maybe not. Did you see that in Andrew?
Sure. He was a leader and a leader on campus and was a leader in his fraternity. He was an SAE at Texas Tech and just a good guy with a good personality and a good work ethic.
Key.
So you knew he was going to do well.
Mm-hmm.
And but I didn't know he was going to be a deputy secretary by the time he was 39. That's really showing off.
And you were at the swearing in. Did you speak?
Yes.
Okay.
And I spoke, and Dr. Ben Carson spoke, and told him that during his period of time, he's now the most famous Red Raider, with the exception of maybe Mahomes. And everybody got a big laugh out of that.
That's a good line.
But his all of his relatives were there, and his wife. He and his wife, they have 3 children, and they were at my football box last year for a game, and they had one of them was almost 4, and the other 2 twins were almost 2. And there was a lot of activity. Mm-hmm. I mean, there was more activity in my box than there was on the field. It was unbelievable, but they're really cute kids and nice family, and Texas Tech's very proud of him.
Congratulations to him.
Yeah, congratulations to Andrew Hughes. We're talking about several things, but one was the Falklands War. There had always been a dispute on the Falkland Islands. And in 1976, the economy got so bad in Argentina, a junta of, the military took over. And then in 1982, I think they were thinking, well, the public didn't like them that much, and so they'd go ahead and invade the Falklands and get that back, and that'd help everybody's attitude. It'd make them look better. And they invaded, and it reminded me of a story that a friend of mine used to tell, that in Seagraves, Texas, a guy told these other fellas, a high school guy, that he there was somebody flirting with his girlfriend, and he was going to go pull him out of the car at the Dairy Queen and whip him. And they went down to see it. Not a lot happening in Seagraves, and there's going to be a fight. You want to go see it. And they watched him, and he pulled him out of the car okay, but he couldn't get him back in. And that's kind of what happened to the Argentines, and they had the British were not about to give it up, but the British had, some of the people internally had wanted to give it up. There's about 3,600 people live on that island. And they speak English, the British. They didn't want to go to Argentina because they didn't want to have to start speaking another language or doing business. And so that they had worked hard to get the British to defend them in case there was an invasion, but they didn't think there would be. And I think that you always have to watch leaders, especially military leaders. They'll get a war going to get people, they may be mad about some of your policies, but they'll rally behind you during a war. And you always have to be careful if somebody's starting a war for those reasons. And it appears that they did in most instances. U.S. played a critical role. President Reagan was very good friends with Margaret Thatcher, and they got along fine. And Great Britain was a NATO member, and so a NATO member, if they're attacked or something, you have to come to their aid. But for the first couple of weeks, Reagan tried to play diplomacy, and he had Alexander Haig. You remember Alexander Haig, the Secretary of State, that when Reagan got shot, he said, "I'm in charge here." And the way he said it and the tone and everything, he wanted to be president someday. But just the way he said that ended his political career before it got started.
Yeah.
And
sadly, that's what people remember Alexander Haig for.
And he was a good officer, he was a good Secretary of State, and Reagan liked him. But he started doing some diplomacy and meeting with the junta and meeting with Thatcher and everything, and it became apparent that they were not going to work anything out. Reagan did something. He gave some military aid, and he put sanctions on Argentina for the invasion. And I think that if you look at the Falkland Islands, Congressman Charlie Wilson, we had a meeting over the war. And Wilson said, "Why in the hell would they want to win it?" Either side. He said, "It's cold, and the chill factor stays in the 30s and 40s, almost year round. It's cold, it's windy, it rains and snows a lot, and you're 300 miles from Buenos Aires, and so, you don't have a city you can escape to very easy, and there's not that many commercial flights because there's only 3,600 people live there. Most of them don't have enough money to fly somewhere. And but Wilson always said that, why are they having a war? They ought to have a war in the winter, loses the country, doesn't have to take care of it anymore. But in the Falkland Islands, they, most of their economies from fishing and sheep. They grow a very high grade of wool, and that's used in the Great Britain to make sweaters and that's big. And then tourism, but most on tourism they'll come, and like if you get there early in the morning, you can leave late that afternoon, but there's not daily flights, and so that becomes a problem. And but the tourism and fishing and sheep, that's it. And there's two big islands. There's over 700 islands, but there's two large ones. And the sound between them was named after an officer in the British military named Falkland. And so that's how they got the name. But it was a quick invasion, and the British kept telling me, "You're going to have to get out." And they sent an aircraft carrier in, and Argentina had not updated their military. It was still World War II style in their Navy. And the British had one of the planes come off the carrier and was 18 miles away from the battleship of Argentina, and dropped a missile on them, and it hit them and blew up, and they never heard the airplane. It was 18 miles away, sunk the ship, and that's where most of the casualties of over 600 came from. And then they sunk a couple other ships, and became very apparent that the war was over, really before it started. And Argentina, they didn't think through. I think their military people were thinking it would rally everyone. And I think they really believed that the British would say, "Hey, you can have it. We don't want it."
Not Margaret Thatcher.
And not Margaret Thatcher. They misjudged her terribly, and was a big deal. And UN, tried to get involved and have some diplomacy, but they were about as effective as they usually are, and nothing happened. But NATO got the U.S. in. They had a compact with Argentina, the United States did, about fighting communism if they tried to invade. Well, if someone had tried to take over the island and Argentina had it and it was a communist government trying, U.S. would have rallied to their side. But this was NATO. It was theirs legally. It was Great Britain's legally. And so they were not about to, not rally to Thatcher's side, even though they tried for a few weeks to work out some kind of an agreement. And these hostilities, just like with Iran and everything, they're pretty quick. They come up, and you hope that they'll work out some kind of an agreement. Now, I don't know what will happen in Iran or not, but they don't. They've still got their airplanes for 1979 or before, and a lot of them don't have the parts that can't fly. They just
a lot of them got blown up too,
and a lot of them got blown up early before the U.S. got involved. They didn't have any planes in the air for their defense, and so I mean, the report came out, and jumping back to one part, the report came out that they didn't really damage anything. It set them back about
they didn't
a few months, and I don't believe that, and most of the people don't. But that was a New York Times story, and it fit with their philosophy, and so
and the same reporter that broke this story and did the story is the same one that pushed the Biden briefcase, the Biden laptop, the Russia misinformation. It's the same one. It certainly seems like the White House, this administration, is doing everything they can to find out where this leak came from, and they're going to do something about it versus leaks in the past.
I think there's no question about that. The president's really mad about that, and you saw him and Hegseth. They were outraged to someone think that they'll be back operating in just few months, and I really doubt that what will happen. The internal politics in any presidential administration at the White House is tough. If somebody sees you maybe getting ahead of them or something, they may leak some story on you. You got to be, but that happens in each congressional office. That staff will get in a fight on who's going to be the closest and the one that has the most influence with the member. And you have to really stay on top of that to make sure everybody gets along. And if they have too big a fight, well, the thing to do is always fire both of the ones involved in the fight, and everyone else catches on that they need to try to get along together. One other thing that happened last week, that the president, Trump, was able to get the NATO people to cough up 5% of the gross national product for the defense of NATO. And that was good. I think the only one that kind of balked at it was Spain, but he's working overtime on Spain, and so we'll see what happens there.
It only seems right, doesn't it?
Well, for years we've just looked the other way and let NATO, we financed it, and others would put in a little, but not much, and so that's changed, and I think it was a step in the right direction. I saw a study last week. It says that parents that travel with little kids, if my friend Andrew Hughes traveled with his, it takes you 2.5 days to just recover when you get home. If you've got twins 2 years old and another one 4, golly, just getting everybody in their seat in the car and putting 3 baby seats in, and there's a lot of activity on things like that. Also, that came out that one of the things people are doing when the economy's doing worse, they tighten their belts. And a survey came out that belt sales were down 52%. So what they did, they didn't buy any new belts. Mm-hmm. That's how they tightened their belts. 52% of them. We had stupid criminal of the week was a lady that worked in a jewelry store, and there were some jewels that were missing, and she said she didn't know anything about it, and that's what everybody said. And then she went on vacation, and she posted some pictures while on vacation on Facebook, and they showed the jewels that had been stolen. She had forgotten, she wore the jewels on vacation, and then put it on the social media, and got caught. And I would put her in the stupid criminal classification.
Absolutely. Wow.
But, in Houston, they had a problem. There was a woman sitting in a lawn chair by Interstate 45 with a gun, and they got some calls that she's shooting up in the air, and I don't know what the justification is or what her defense is. Defense may well be insanity, or it goes back to somebody that was stupid. There is a report, and I want to read the names. These people have something in common. Jeff Bezos, Mark Hamill, Lin-Manuel Miranda, Rachel McAdams, Fred Durst, Sharon Stone, Jay Leno. And the thing they have in common, they all worked at McDonald's when they were teenagers.
Is that right?
Yeah. There's 36,000 McDonald's stores in the world.
Wow.
And that tells you the influence of the American culture. Mm-hmm. And I ate one in Vienna, Austria one time, and it wasn't bad, but the meat did not taste like it does in Texas. It was not as good, but a little difference there. This week, the vote will be coming up on the big, beautiful bill, keep the tax cuts that were passed during the first Trump administration, keep them going and make some cuts to help pay for it. And the Senate on Saturday had a 50-50, tie vote, and the vice president had to be called from his residence to come up and break the tie, and did. So, it's going to be interesting. The thing that happened with the Republicans, they've got 3 votes more than they need, and when you lose all 3 of them, then you got to go to the vice president, and they still were able to pass it. But there'll be a lot of talk and a lot of justification on why they voted against it, and it's been a hard bill. If one thing that happens, this is really important, if you're wanting perfect legislation, you're always going to be voting no. Mm-hmm. Because, every bill is going to have something you don't like, especially when the bill's got over 1,000 pages or 2,000 pages.
Yeah.
You can find something. Easy vote is just vote against everything, and that way, I wasn't for it.
Right.
Somebody jumps you about it and say, well, we didn't give y'all enough money, mm-hmm. or somebody else jumps you about it. They say, well, we didn't, we spent too much money.
You mentioned the number of pages. This one's 940 pages. Yeah. Is Chuck Schumer from New York going to have him read it out loud on the floor of the Senate? Did I read that?
Well, that was what he said originally, and he can do that to buy some time, mm-hmm. If that's what his cause is. But I think that this is usually, if you get down and it's that close a vote, there's not going to be a bunch of people switching. Mm-hmm. and over-reading the bill. Reading that bill, most members, what they do, they have different people on their staff that's assigned to different subjects. Whatever their subject matter is, they'll read and write a memo on it. Mm-hmm. And they'll read that, and it may be 30 pages, maybe 100 pages, maybe 2 pages.
It reminds me of the time Nancy Pelosi said, well, we got to get it passed so we can read it.
Yeah, got to pass this so we can read it and see what it says. I said, wow, I don't believe I'd told that. There are times you don't want to tell everything you know.
Mm-hmm.
Saying of the day was that walked into a bar and everyone was happy and drinking, having a good time. We had lost the war. That's the most unusual comment I've ever heard from a soldier or about wartime.